Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Music Made Me. Thank you so much for joining us once again. We truly do appreciate it. Please make sure you are liking, sharing, following, subscribing to us on whatever streaming platform you are listening on. And please make sure to follow us on social media. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Just search The Music Made Me and we should pop up. Today, we have an awesome conversation with Canadian country artist Tim Hicks. Now, if you followed Tim's career, it might seem like he was an overnight success. But as I found out in our conversation, that is anything but the truth. He spent many years grinding it out in the bar scene, trying to make a name for himself before eventually hitting the national stage. He has many great stories to tell, so please enjoy our conversation with Tim Hicks. The youngest picture I could see of you was on your social media. I think you were probably around 4 or 5, and your dad had a pair of headphones on you.
Yeah.
So can I assume that you grew up in a pretty musical family then?
Yeah, I didn't actually.
Oh, really?
I know that photo. That was actually at my grandparents' house. My uncle, my dad's oldest brother, my uncle Chuck, had Down syndrome and loved music.
Oh,
And he
okay.
had a big old pair of studio headphones like these that he listened to his Elvis records on. So I was actually sitting on his bed, yeah, playing records. And I called it, according to my parents, I called it my music hat, the music hat. So now here I am, more than that. If I was 2, let's see, we're 39 years later.
Right. Yeah.
Wearing the same hat. You know what I mean? So there you go.
And so at the age of 6, you started taking music lessons
Yeah.
at the Ontario Conservatory of Music.
Yeah.
So was that your parents just wanting to get you into some form of activity if they weren't really into music?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say that they weren't into music. So my dad played a bit of guitar and he played
Oh, okay.
he played guitar and sang at church kind of thing.
Ah,
But what was really the musicality in my family, I believe, comes from my great grandmother. So my mother's grandmother, she had an organ in her house. She had a big old house. It's still there in Niagara Falls on Stanford Green Drive. And so old the house is, it had a parlor. And in the parlor was this organ, and would noodle on it for hours. And I have vague memories of sitting on her knee at like 3, 4 years old and singing church hymns.
okay.
So she played fiddle and she played organ, but in those days it was unladylike for a woman to play fiddle.
Oh, really?
So she was kind of shunned from that, and then into kind of, I mean, she was a homemaker and a farmer and that kind of thing. But that's where my love of music comes from. And I came out musical, so they didn't really know where I came from, but I had this ability to be able to sit at an instrument and figure out songs. Which they thought was pretty interesting for a 3, 4, 5-year-old kid. So they asked me. I remember when they sat me down. They said, "Would you like to take lessons?" And I got to pick whether I took piano lessons or organ lessons, and I picked organ. I don't know why.
Oh, really? I thought you were going to say piano. I thought for sure.
No, because my great grandmother had an organ, so I didn't really understand the difference, and I just said organ because it was what I knew, And so we got one in the house. And the beautiful thing about the Ontario Conservatory music at that time, and I think it's similar today, is that they put together little bands based on the age of the kids and skill level. And so right from the time, like I think I took maybe less than a year of lessons until they said, "Would you like to be in a band?" And I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. Yes, I want to be in a band. That's like the Beatles. That sounds great to me, And it was great. I'd have my piano, like my personal lesson organ. I took piano later on at the same place, but so on Saturday mornings for half an hour I had my lesson, and then on Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock we'd have an hour-long band practice, and that was so exciting for me because all of a sudden music was a team sport. And I talk about this all the time. It's like, it's the same thing as you can drag your hockey net into your driveway and play by yourself after school and practice your wrist shot and pretend and, do all the basics, and it's fine. But when you get 2 or 3 friends together, all of a sudden you got a little game on your hands, and isn't that way more fun than playing by yourself? And it was very much like that for me in with music. Once I figured out that you could play together, and the power that comes with, five guys or five girls or whoever's in your band, playing the same chord at the same time, that was really exciting for me.
And were you singing back then as well?
So I didn't sing. My very first band, I didn't sing, but they quickly realized that I could sing, and from what I gather, it was an unusual skill to be able to sing and play at the same time, and I always did that. It was just something that came naturally to me. So I got moved from the keyboard player to being the keyboard player slash lead singer pretty fast.
As long as you can remember, have you always seen it as something you wanted to do as a career?
Yeah. Yeah, and that was clear to me, and I've told this story a number of times too. It's like grade 2, Mrs. Morgan's class, Greendale Public School in Niagara Falls. She went around and asked everyone what they wanted to be when they grew up. And when it got to me, I said professional musician, and all the kids laughed. And she said, "Oh, Timmy, you can't be a professional musician. They don't make any money." And I thought, screw you, lady. I don't need money. I just want to play. You know what I mean?
Exactly, right.
And that was the beginnings of this fire that got lit under me, because I faced a lot of opposition, from family and from people that were close to me. When it came time that I had decided I really want to do this as a living. They were like, "You're crazy. You can't do it. It's so hard. Please don't." People would say things like, "Do you want to live out of a suitcase for the rest of your life?" And I'm like, "Yeah,
Why not?
great to me." Yeah, you know what I mean? And that opposition, or that little bit of challenge, really kind of, like I said, like sort of lit a fire in me to kind of prove everyone that I could, and like from guidance counselors to my grandparents, and let me preface this by saying, when you're a teenager and you're full of piss and vinegar, you don't, I thought these people were crazy, but as a parent now, fully get where they're coming from, fully get it. And when people ask me, like, "Do you hope your kids are musical?" Yes, I'm glad that they are musical. Do I want them to follow it into a career? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's just it's more heartbreaking than it is fulfilling, and on any given day. You know what I mean? And
Right,
you
yep.
don't want that for your children. You don't want your children to have to suffer and to feel that anguish. And the entertainment business is such a bizarre business, in that it doesn't matter how talented you are or how good you are. There are so many other factors at play there that create success.
Right.
So so what I'm trying to say is, now in retrospect, I fully understand where all those people were coming from, but I'm glad that I
Right.
didn't listen.
And then when you went to the University of Waterloo, was that sort of to appease everybody
Yes.
and
Yeah,
just kind of get everyone off your back?
absolutely. So I went to Waterloo to chase a girl, and
Okay.
that didn't work out, by the way. But I also knew that Waterloo was a great school, and that, I my parents, especially my mother, not so much my dad, but my mom, was really like, you need to do something other than music. And I told them I wanted to do a degree in psychology because I wanted to use that as a springboard to do music therapy.
Oh, okay.
Those were all lies. Those were all lies. I knew that I wanted to do music full time, and I didn't know how to make that happen. But there was something in me that was just saying, "You just got to stick with it, and you'll get your shot." And so many times, almost packed it in, and like again, so it's just bizarre how things work out. But I'm glad that I didn't at the end of the day.
And when did the Neil Diamond cover band
Oh
come
my
in?
God. Yeah, that was the lowest point of my career. So, okay, so what happened was this. One day I woke up and I had gigs on the books 6 months out, 6 days a week. So I decided, I guess I'm doing it. And
Right.
I got offered this gig. I had done a stint on a cruise ship, like playing in the band, in a lounge band, and toured all over. Got to see the world But when you do a gig on a cruise ship, you play everything from The Girl from Ipanema to Achy Breaky Heart and anything in between. And we did. And I loved it because I had to learn, you played 5 hours a night. So your chops get really good, really sharp, really fast.
Right.
And you had to learn, I think I had to learn between 300 and 400 songs to do that gig.
Wow.
And that was so valuable as a songwriter to learn and pick apart and deconstruct all of those songs, from Summer Wind, Frank Sinatra to the Beatles, and this band. So I did one contract with them, and I came back and finished my degree. I wasn't going to do it, but my mom cried.
Oh,
And
that'll get you.
I couldn't make my mother cry, so I said, "Okay, guys, I gotta go. I gotta go finish my degree." And so later on, I reconnected with that band. They were doing a Beatles tribute band full time, and they needed a guy. And my band had just broken up, and I needed work. So I took the gig, and in doing so, I had to sub out all of my house gigs. So, for instance, I was playing like every Tuesday in Brantford, every Wednesday in Waterloo, Thursdays in Guelph, and then Friday, Saturday was always changing. I was with the band, and but I got this Beatles gig offer, and we dressed up and we wore the suits and the wigs and the whole nine, and we were going to get to play in 28 countries singing Beatles songs, and I thought that was really interesting, and I needed the work, so I took it. When I got back from that gig, all the gigs that I had been promised, don't worry, you'll always have a job here, they were all gone. Every single one of them. I had no work. And that was unusual for me. Like I was pretty consistent in terms of always being able to pay my bills and I never made a great living. I was barely living above the poverty line, but I was doing what I loved to do, and that was okay. And
Yeah.
and it was in that low moment that I got hired by this casino band. And it was the kind of thing where the keyboard player was the personal assistant to the agent that booked all the casinos. It was kind of a little bit shady.
Right.
And they needed a guy, and they would do for instance, a guy, this Neil Diamond guy. He would come up from Pennsylvania and do 4 or 5 casinos in Ontario, and he needed a band because he couldn't bring an American band. It was too expensive with visas and blah blah blah. So we would be the band. And, the thing about that gig was I spent weeks in my basement learning all those parts. I learned all those parts, guitar parts, up the wazoo, because Neil Diamond, he's a fantastic songwriter and great production, and I learned all the background parts, never having met this man that I was working for on this tour. And first night was a Thursday night, and we were at the Fort Erie Casino. And nice to meet you. Here we are at the gig, ready to play. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm blah, blah, blah. And I said, by the way, I'm dying to know. So in such and such a song, do you want me to grab the part up here, or should I go down here, or because there's 3 parts happening? Which one do you want me to cover? And he's like, what? Oh, no, it's all on a track. Just turn your volume up.
Oh no.
I said, are you kidding me? I spent weeks learning these guitar parts. And to be told, no, it's all on a backing track, dude. Just turn your volume down and dance. And I was so offended. And that was you could see how, at that point, I was like, I need a job. This is not, I couldn't look people in the eye from the stage, knowing that it wasn't us playing.
Right, yeah.
The drums were on the track. I thought it was suspect because the guy was very insistent that the drummer had to play an electronic drum set. Which for any guy in a band is what? Who wants an electric kit?
Yeah, I was wondering how he was going to play to a track.
Right. So I was like, well, maybe it's volume sensitive rooms, which they were. So that's one way you can control volume is you just turn down the drums, literally, right? So I was like, and it wasn't my band. I wasn't the band leader. So I was just there to get a check. And, it was so unbelievably horrible that it was almost a breaking point for me. And I didn't stay. I did one tour with them, and it was literally over the course of not even a week. And I said, I can't do this. I need to feel good about, the product that I'm selling, from the stage, and looking people in the eye. It was a tough one. It was a tough one for me.
Wow. And as much as we could probably sit here for a full week and talk about all the
Oh yeah,
crazy stories, I do
yeah.
want to get into the successes
All right, Chris.
that you have had. And so let's jump through all of that craziness and get to 2011 when you
Yeah,
sign with Open Road.
yeah.
What was that like? Was it sort of a process in signing with them, or was there one
Oh
moment you can remember of that it hitting you like, oh my gosh, I'm signing a record deal?
yeah. No, they did actually. I didn't physically sign anything until much later. It was
Oh,
always
okay.
very like I saw. So I met the RGK Open Road people through a couple of songwriters that had seen me play at my gig in downtown Toronto. I used to play every Wednesday at a place called Grace O'Malley's, and just by myself. And I did everything because in those days, again, like you could. I just wanted to. I had to take every gig. I
Right.
needed it. And so we could do it all. We could do a night of rock covers. We could do a night of country. We could do a night of Irish music. And at my acoustic gigs, I would just do a mishmash of everything because people would ask for requests. Hey, play Keith Urban. Here you go. Hey, play Journey. Here you go. Play Neil Diamond. Here you go. You know what I mean? Like, so I would do all those things. And I met these songwriters at the gig and they said, do you write? And I said yes, although I hadn't written anything in a long, long time.
Oh, okay.
And they said, well, let's, we got the one fella said, I got a deal over at EMI Publishing and I've got some studio time. Why don't we write some songs and we'll see what happens? So we wrote some songs and they took those songs to Nashville and they played them for Ron Kitchener, who's my manager now. And Ron, said these songs are awful, but there's something with this guy's voice. Maybe we'll come and see him sing. And that was it. That was sort of in June. And the CCMAs that year where it was in Hamilton, and which is close to where I live. And we had sort of kept in touch. They said, listen, if he sets up a showcase in and around the CCMA, maybe we'll come.
Oh,
And so
okay.
by that time, my wife was super pregnant with our first child. And I begged this bar at Fennel and Wentworth in Hamilton called Squires. I used to play there once a month. And I said, could I come on a Sunday afternoon, set up my gear for free, just play? Because this talent scout from Nashville is going to come and see me play. And they were like, I guess. Okay, sure. It was like out of a movie, man. I packed the room full of friends and family. In walks this guy with a dirty baseball cap, and he says, "Can you tell me where to find Tim Hicks?" I said, "That's me." And he goes, "Okay, Denny Carr, nice to meet you. You're on." And that was it. I jumped up there and played. And what I thought was interesting was he stayed for the whole performance. Typically, I'd heard they'd stay for one or two songs and then leave, but he stayed for the whole set. And I sat down with him, and he said, "You kind of got your hands full. When's the baby due?" And I said, "He's due in November." He said, "Okay, well, come have the baby in November and come to Nashville early in the new year, and we'll see what happens." And that's what we did. On January 5th, we wrapped him up in a blanket and drove my minivan to Nashville and spent a week. And then I just kept going back. They kept saying, when can you come back? So I'd go back for another week. When can you come back? Well, I'd go back for another week. And eventually they said, okay, we're going to put something out and we'll see how it goes. And no guarantees, but maybe you never know. So they put out Get By, and it went gangbusters. And then it was on. And it wasn't until after the success of Get By did I actually physically sign. But at that point, it was game on. And I remember, the hardest part about that was making the transition from being a working musician to being an artist. And so they were begging me, like, cancel your gigs. And I was like, listen, are you going to pay for my groceries? And they said, no. And I said, well, then I'm not canceling my gigs. Like, that's just it. So I had to strike a deal with them. They said, okay, on June 1st, you're not going to do any more cover gigs. I said, okay, I can handle that. And on May 31st, I played my last cover gig in a little tiny town called Acton, Ontario, at Tanner's Garage. And that was it. And, never looked back.
Wow. And you talk about the writing and the fact that you had written in the past, but not recently.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're going down to Nashville to
Yeah.
write.
Oh,
What
yeah.
was your feeling at that point? Was it a
Uh,
scary thing?
oh, yeah. I felt like because, in Southern Ontario, because even though that it's big, I still kind of felt like I had proven myself around here. Like, I knew a lot of people in the bar industry and the club industry, and I had a reputation, and, I felt like, I wouldn't say I felt like a big fish in a small pond, but I did feel like I was a player in that game. And when I got to Nashville, I felt this big because, as I remember putting it to someone then, like, everybody there sings and plays, much like everyone you meet in Los Angeles as an actor.
Right.
In Nashville, everybody plays guitar, sings, and your cab driver and the guy that brought you your hamburger at lunch sings and plays better than you. And that's just how it is there. Like, 'cause it's just full of talent. But I had a bizarre conversation with a taxi driver on the way to the airport. I had been down there for a week, and he picked me up for my early flight home. And he said, what are you doing in town? He saw my guitar. I said, I'm writing songs. He goes, yeah, you and everybody. I said, yeah, me and everybody. He said, did you meet anybody? I said, well, what do you mean? Like, I thought he meant like famous people or something.
Right.
I said, well, what do you mean? Famous people? He said, no, like anybody in the business. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, I was invited here. And he said, oh, well, you've already made it. He said, I pick up 70 people a week at the airport that just show up to Nashville trying to make it. And he said, if you got an invitation to be down here, you're way ahead. And that kind of put it in perspective. Like, oh, okay, I understand. But I also felt like I had to learn really fast how to be a good songwriter because, like I said, Nashville is full of world-class talent. And, but I also felt like I wasn't competing with them either. You know what I mean? I had my own thing going on, and, it was never my dream to live in Nashville and to take on America. I only ever wanted to be like Blue Rodeo, like I only ever wanted to be like a Canadian act, that could tour and put out records and make a modest living doing what I love to do. And that was always what was good enough for me.
And so Get By is released. It hits really well. In 2014, you get the CCMA Rising Star Award. So within those 3 years, from 2011 to 2014, all of a sudden you've hit. And now, what were those 3 years like? Because for me, I sort of look at it two ways. You could either think, look at me, I'm a country star all of a sudden, or I've worked my butt off for 17, 20 years, whatever it was, grinding. And now all of a sudden you want to look at me, and all of a sudden you want to say I'm this great and I'm this good. So how was that transition mentally for you?
It was tough. Like it was really hard because we were having a family at the exact same time. And so to have 2 young kids at home and a wife on mat leave and to have to be away now all the time was incredibly difficult. At the same time, my childhood dream of becoming a professional musician had come true. So there was, like, on one hand, the pain of having to be away from my newborn son and my daughter and my wife. And then on the other hand, all of a sudden I'm riding tour buses and playing arenas. And it would, if I'm honest, every now and again, it would get under my skin. Like somebody would tweet at me like, Tim Hicks, when are you going to play a show close to home? And I was thinking like, well, I played close to home for 18 friggin' years and nobody cared. Nobody cared. You didn't come then. I played at the Pepper. You could have seen me for free downtown. You know what I mean? Like, so, but you can't, as fast as it comes out, it goes. Like you can't, people weren't aware of you then, and it wasn't like there was no social media, there was no real way of getting the word out that you were playing other than like you'd have a website or like maybe MySpace or something like that. So I don't fault people for that. And also too, it wasn't like my career now I feel is like very streamlined. I do a certain kind of music, and I'm not everyone's cup of tea, but I'm some people's cup of tea, and that's okay, but then it was like I was doing anything to pay the bills. So, I'm glad that people didn't have to see me in that regard, you know what I mean? But I'll tell you, there's one venue in particular that I got fired from.
Oh, really?
And fired, not even a phone call to say, hey, those dates that we booked, we're not going to do them anymore. They just posted a thing on their social media like, hey, to all performers that were booked on Sunday nights, Your services are no longer required.
Really?
And I was very offended by that because, of course, I needed every dollar.
Yeah.
And by that point, I was pretty much booked all the time. So I could have replaced those dates if I had notice. But this is all to say that the one venue that fired me, not in a heated thing or anything, canceled all my dates, is one of the venues that goes to town to tell everyone, oh, Tim Hicks played here when he was coming up. And it's like, you guys fired me. You didn't even call me to tell me that I was, that the dates weren't happening. So it's kind of bizarre, the range of reactions that we got, especially out of the gate, like, everyone being impressed to people being skeptical to, because people would see me in different regards. Like they saw me play in a rock band one time. So they're like, well, how can he's country now? It's like, well, we were always kind of doing that kind of music, but maybe not necessarily at the venue that you saw us at, because we at that venue, they asked us to do a certain thing. You know what I mean? Because it was just a different game. And I still find it difficult to balance being an artist versus being a working musician. And I still identify, probably to my detriment, as a working musician versus as an artist. You know what I mean? Because I still live for the gig,
Yeah. Yeah. And your band,
Mm-hmm.
you've had the same band pretty much all the
Yes.
way through.
Yeah.
Were you playing with them before signing with Open Road, like back in your bar gigs?
For years. It was me, Doug, Rob, and Andrew were the core of the band. And Rob has been playing on my records since the year 2000. So him and I have been playing together for 21 years, and I've known him for 22 probably. And Doug for, God, it's got to be 12 years now, a dozen years or so, maybe 10 for sure. No, it's got to be 12 or 15 years. So it's like these were the guys that, that were playing with me in the trenches, and all these bar gigs. And I remember there was a moment shortly thereafter when Get By had done its thing and everyone was we were gearing up for the next phase, and they said, oh, and we're going to find you a much younger, much more attractive band.
That's what I was wondering, if you ever had pressure to get that youthful country band.
Yes. And I said, whoa. I said, okay, listen, for one thing, I didn't come all this way to throw a monkey wrench in the plans, and I'll do whatever it is I have to do in order to continue this ride, because I have a family now and I got to keep it going. But let's put this in perspective. I said, my band, they're all great players. Okay. They email back. They show up on time. No one has a drug or alcohol problem. They are happy to do whatever it is that we ask them to do. And there's chemistry there. So it's like that stuff you can't buy. Like you can't, yes, you can go to your Rolodex and find yourself a young, attractive guitar player and a bass player that looks the part and a really exciting drummer over here and blah, blah, blah. But you put them all in a room and you're not necessarily going to have the same chemistry as you have from the guys that have been playing together for 10 years. And I say to people all the time, it's like a hockey team. If you play on the same line, and I don't know this firsthand because I'm not a hockey player, but I've heard from hockey players, I hang with enough of them to know that if you play on the same line with the same guys for long enough, you don't have to look to pass the puck. You just know they're going to be there. And my band is very much like that. Musically speaking, I don't have to look to pass the puck. I just have to shake my butt a certain way, and they know what's coming. Or I just have to say a certain thing, or look back from the microphone give them a look, and they know he's not going to sing the third verse, take another solo, and those things are so valuable. Not to mention the fact that these are my buddies, and I want to share the success of the work of it that we've put in all those years with them, and that's why it's important for me and to include them in things like video shoots and like not ditching them for a younger, more attractive band early on. And, we did do some videos where we hired actors because there was no money in the budget to send all of us to Los Angeles. And I did it. And at the end of it, I was like, I felt like I needed a shower or something. Like it smelled dirty. And they don't care. Like they're like, listen, dude, whatever you do, because they don't play on my records. I cut records with a producer, and him and I do all the heavy lifting there. And my band's fine with that. they're like, do your thing, and we'll learn your songs, and let's go out on the road and have a great time, and drink some beers, and play some arenas.
Right. And another person within your career that has really been a steady part of it is Jeff Copland on the writing
Yeah,
side.
yeah.
How important has that relationship been, especially when you're going into that world of Nashville and having him there as a steady presence?
Yeah, well, they paired us up together. We had eyed another producer early on, and it just didn't work out, just timing wise and scheduling. And so I was pretty bummed about it. And my day to day manager at the time, he said, "Don't worry, there's others." And he paired us together, me and Jeff. And the first song we wrote together was "Hell Raising Good Time." And what was interesting about that was, never having met each other before, I'll never, like, when he answered the door, he was playing that riff on the guitar, and I was like, oh,
Oh,
nice.
really?
What is that? He's like, I don't know. I was just fiddling around, and that's kind of how the relationship started. And he's become, like, we're such close friends now, almost like an older brother to me. And you need that in a producer, I think. Like, I need to be able to have a full-on red-faced argument about the song with someone and then go get beer after. You know what I mean? Like, I need to have that. And Jeff is that for me. And there was a time where like I did Shake These Walls with Corey Crowder. And that was, there's a few things going on. Jeff and we were a little bit moody with each other back then, but for a number of reasons. But that being said, like, that was more about how the record was made, because I wanted to make a Nashville style record where we go in the studio with a band and cut it live off the floor. I really wanted to do that, and he doesn't like making records that way, and so it was decided that we would look elsewhere for that record. And of course, Shake These Walls had Stomping Ground on it, and Slow Burn, and Slide Over, all these hit songs. And so to this day, he still, he says, "You're the only artist that ever strayed from me and had success." So I'm like, okay, all right, Jeff, I get it. But we talk on the phone all the time, and we're in the throes right now of writing the next thing, whatever that's going to be. So it's been so important. And I mean, I've written some of my most important songs with him. Hell Raising and Stronger Beer, of course, which has become has permeated pop culture, as they say. And that song was purely a joke, and it was never meant to be anything other than to give my managers a laugh and move on. Of course, and now it's gone platinum. So,
And then I heard him talking about No Truck Song as well. And the fact that you guys sit around a room, you've sat around so much trying to write that number one song.
yeah.
And No Truck Song was just sort of a fun song that you guys wrote. And
Yeah.
then that's the one that goes number one.
Yeah, we were banging our heads on the table. Yeah, so we do this thing called Wildcard Night whenever I'm in Nashville, and we've done it now virtually. But so when you go to Nashville to write songs, typically it happens during business hours. So you might write between the hours of like 10 a.m. and 4 p.m.,
Right.
which is great. But sometimes, when they say on Tuesday at 10 a.m., you will meet John and Jared, and you will write a ballad. It's like, well, how do I know what song I want to write on Tuesday at 10 a.m.? Like, I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah.
But that's very much how business is done down there, and it's actually positive because it forces you to be creative, which is great. But musicians work at night. We're night owls.
Yeah.
So we decided, because I started staying at Jeff's place when I would go down there, and it would just turn into a write fest, like 24 hours a day. Like, we're staying up all night and writing. So we decided we would do Wildcard Night. And the name of the game with Wildcard Night is we get some pizzas, we get some beers, all the rules go out the window. No one's allowed to say no, and you can write anything. And so, I had this idea. It was actually going to be like a love song, like, this ain't a love song. Like, I kind of lining it up like, I miss you, I love you. We can't be together, and I would say all those things, but this ain't a love song. Right?
Oh, okay.
So I was working this out in my brain, and Jeff knew about this idea, but on Wildcard Night, I didn't want to write a love song. I wanted to write something fun. So I said, Bruce Wallace was with us that night. We've written many songs with Bruce, and Bruce says, what do you want to write? I said, I want to write something really country. And Jeff pipes up from the kitchen. He's like, as long as it's not about trucks, because we'll never get it cut. Because someone told us, like, don't write about trucks anymore. It's not cool.
Okay.
And I was like, challenge accepted. This ain't no truck song. Like, and we laughed, and it was just like stupid silliness. Like, and we wrote it in about an hour and a half, and then like went to the bar after, right? And we're like, well, that'll never be anything. But it sure was fun to write, you know? And next thing you know, they're like, you know, my team loved it and we're cutting it. And then when they said, oh, we're going to put it out as a single, I was like, you guys are crazy. You guys are crazy. That piece of garbage, really? This ain't no truck song? They're like, no, trust it. It's got a vibe. Like, it's really good. And, you know, not that I was second guessing my ability to write a song. I just thought it was too silly for people, you know?
Right.
But if anyone was going to do it, it was the stronger beer guy. So
Yeah, exactly.
here we are, you know, doing that thing. And it just turned out that the timing was perfect. It was, you know, COVID and people were bummed and it was dark. And, you know, here we come with this silly song that's like, you know, with the ridiculous video of line dancing, you know, people out in the desert. And it was just a whole lot of fun. And it became my second number one and went gold all in the same week. I think it was like just bizarre how these, and went to show us, like, you never know what's going to resonate with people.
Mm-hmm.
And how timing is such a factor in all those things, like, you know. And so you have No Truck Song, and then we went and released Wreck This Town, you know, kind of anticipating that the world would open up a little bit, and that because, you know, things were looking pretty good here in Canada at the end of the summer. It's like, nope, second wave hit, everyone stayed home, no one's going out anywhere, Wreck This Town tanks, right? So it's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
you just don't know what's going to resonate, what isn't.
And now you have the new song, The Good, the Bad, and the Pretty.
Yeah.
It's a song about basically bar life, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've talked to other musicians who speak about when they're writing and drawing on past experiences, and that's how they write, and that's how they get emotion into the song. So when you were writing this song, did that happen for you? Did you go back to those 17 years of going around the bars and sort of reminisce on that?
Yes, that's exactly what it was about. So with that one, I had the title, and we wrote it at the CCMA SoCan Songwriting Camp. So it was like
Right.
a group of producers, group of songwriters, group of artists all together, and we worked with each other. Everyone got to work with everybody over the course of a week. I was with Derek Rattan, fantastic songwriter, and Derek Hoffman, great producer, track guy. And I had this title, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And just like the Clint Eastwood movie, and the idea would be, I said, pitched it to Derek, like, you know, here's what I think. I think it should be the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's about all the characters that you meet, you know, in those bars. Because I would play these small towns, and typically there would only be one venue that would have live music anyway. And so there was a mishmash of people, from professionals to construction people to bikers and young people and families eating chicken wings in the corner, and like all different walks of life. And I met some great people in those rooms, and some of which are my friends to this day. And so I was explaining this to Derek, like, wouldn't it be great? We could paint a picture of all those, you know, because they're all similar in certain ways, you know. And, you know, I can see him mulling it over. He's like, I love the concept. He's like, but, you know, can you sing the word ugly? Like, it's a weird word, like, you know, good, the bad, and the ugly. It's a weird word to say. And I was kind of getting frustrated a bit because we weren't going. And I was like, I don't know, Derek, what do you want to call it? Like, the good, the bad, and the pretty? Like, give me a break. And he goes, oh, that. I said, what do you mean that? It's not even a thing. He goes, it will be. Let's write it. You know, that kind of thing. So, and it was one of those things that it just fell out in the moment and felt right and had a thing. And, you know, that's how you get all that imagery, like, you know, the Coors Light sign buzzing on the wall, and, you know, pink lipstick on cigarettes and all that kind of stuff. And it's basically a love letter to all those bars and all those people that I played for all those years.
Right. And now moving forward, I know that you are an album guy, but you've gone through a string here of releasing an EP and releasing some singles. So are you really itching to get back and get out an album?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, you know, I sort of got it. They had to talk me into it. You know, I sat down with my team, my manager in particular, and he's like, this is what we're thinking. You know, it's kind of tough to commit to 12 songs and then just have those 12 songs for 2 years or whatever the cycle of an album is. Right. And he kind of put it in terms like, it'll be cool. Like, you can stay creative. You know, if you write a song today, we can cut it, put it out on the next thing. And we don't have to wait 18 months or 2 years to release music. We can put it out right away. And that sounded attractive to me. And I've kind of leaned into it. to be honest. So, we had this master plan that was great. I loved it. It was, we were going to release 3 songs, and it was called Wreck. And then we were going to release 3 more songs, and it would be called Wreck This. And then we were going to release a record called Wreck This Town and go on tour and have the Wreck This Town tour and all this stuff. And of course, COVID got in the way, and we jumped ship, and we were all in agreement that 2020 needed to end, and anything that any of us did in 2020, we just needed to cut ties with. And so we jumped ship on the last installment of the Wreck This Town record, knowing that we would never get to go on the Wreck This Town tour. But it was okay. Like, it took me a week to get over it, and then it was like, okay, full speed ahead. What's next then? What do we got? What do we need? What's happening? Who's writing this week? And I've really kind of embraced the staying creative and, anything goes kind of atmosphere of like putting out EPs, because literally it's been a little bit like that, in the sense that if I write a good song today, we can cut it tomorrow and put it out on Monday.
Right,
that's interesting to me, as an artist.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, we'll look forward to more new music. I could sit here. I have to have you on again because I have so many things that I wanted to talk to you about.
I love that.
Sort of aside from the music, I saw on your social media, you're hanging out with hockey legends at the Toronto Maple Leafs game. You're singing the hockey song to the fans at the Leafs game. And man, we have all this stuff we need to talk about.
Yeah, I could talk to you. I'm going to write a book one day about all the road stories. Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, yeah, if we're able to have you on again, maybe we can just focus on those road stories, because I would love to hear them.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you for the time. I appreciate it. That was great.
Thank you guys so much once again for joining us and for listening. And thank you to Tim for joining us and sharing his stories. Hopefully we can have him back on one day to share more of his tour stories, because I know he has many great ones. Please make sure you are liking, sharing, following, subscribing to us on whatever streaming platform you are listening on, and that you head over to social media and follow us there as well. Just search The Music Made Me on any of the social platforms and we should pop up. Thank you once again so much for listening, and we'll see you next time on The Music Made Me.